Hello guys, JBread here, back again for another video. I guess you heard the news. A new content pack for CK3, Coronations, has been released. And as you may also know, it's one of the worst rated DLCs ever released for the game. This DLC focuses on the experience of being coronated in the medieval world and the meaningful effects that come from them. For today's video, I would like to try something different. Instead of hating on the DLC, I'll break down its features objectively and judge it based on what it's trying to do using my few hours of experience testing it. Before we dive into the DLC, just a quick note. This video will be divided into 3 sections. First, I want to give some context on Coronations, its historical background. Second, is then a showcase of the mechanics of the DLC. Then lastly, my review and opinion of it. So basically, a coronation isn't just a simple act of placing a crown on a ruler's head to declare him king. It is a ritual that ties the ruler to both sanctity and legitimacy, affirming his authority in the eyes of God, the nobility, and of the people. To keep things simple, medieval coronations drew from 2 traditions, Israeli and Roman. From the former, they inherited the divine dimension. Kings like David and Solomon were anointed with oil as a sign of God's blessing. From the latter, they inherited the imperial tradition. Roman emperors claimed imperium, the right to command armies, enact laws, and govern the state. Once Rome embraced Christianity, that authority was reinterpreted. Rulers still wielded power, but now as something granted by God and confirmed by the church. When Rome eventually fell to the barbarian kingdoms, they didn't abandon these ideas. Once converted to Christianity, they adopted them to help govern their Christian subjects. The idea of imperium now became tied to kingship. These new rulers fused Roman imperial authority and their own warrior king traditions, while keeping the church at the center as the divine guarantor of their rule. Put together, this made coronations uniquely Christian, unlike Buddhism, which leaned away from material symbols, or Islam, where rulers were confirmed by oath and sermon rather than oil. Medieval Christianity embraced the crown, the oil, and the throne as visible signs of God's authority. The liturgy tied everything together. The king swore to defend the faith and ruled justly. Nobles pledged their loyalty, and the church blessed the crown and anointed the monarch. In a way, it was a public contract that binds rulers, clergy, and people under God. With the background out of the way, let's go straight into the game. To serve as demonstration, here I have acquired Epirus as the Normans and now hold the title King. The most immediate change in being a king is that we can no longer equip our crown. As King Roger here, or any character that has recently gained kingship or become an emperor will get the uncrowned status. To check our coronation status, navigate to the succession laws. And as we see here, causes legitimacy and opinion. This now makes getting a coronation essential as soon as you get a title. There are 2 ways to resolve this: achieving either crowned sovereign or anointed sovereign, both of which provide a small relationship boost with your vassals. To start the process, simply open the Activity Decisions menu where the option for a coronation is now available. Coronations act like a feast, where depending on how much you're willing to pay will affect the majesty level of your coronation, granting rewards and maluses depending on the level. But before we could really do that, we must first pick 2 types of coronations: the regular coronation and the anointed coronation. The regular coronation is available to kings and in some cases to emperors. It will reward us with a crowned sovereign status. The anointed coronation, on the other hand, grants the anointed sovereign status, but it is restricted only to emperors whose head of faith is spiritual and has a clergy doctrine of imperial anointment, such as Catholicism via the Pope and Orthodoxy via the Patriarch. For the crowned sovereign, you can only choose your capital as the site of the coronation, whereas for the anointed sovereign, requiring approval via piety and gold, and the ceremony must take place at the head of faith's location. When planning the coronation, there are 3 tiers of expense for the 2 main hubs, the ceremony and the feast afterwards. The more costly the coronation is, the greater the rewards in terms of legitimacy and vassal opinion. You can also get to choose an intent for the coronation, which will determine in the end the specific bonuses we get as a reward, which I will tackle later on. And most importantly, the magnitude of the reward is influenced by the magnificence of the ceremony. There are 4 intents you can choose from. If you go with impressed attendees, you're leaning into soft power, gaining a huge boost to legitimacy along with better cultural acceptance. Embrace attendees is all about strengthening your bond with loyal vassals and keeping them firmly on your side, while weakening detractors, on the other hand, is aimed at your rivals and rebellious vassals, hitting them with penalties if they dare show up. And finally, there's Exalt the Crown, which focuses on your artifacts and counties, giving either one of them powerful modifiers and bonuses. Once you've chosen, you can now set up the activity itself, decide who to invite, and then kick off the coronation event. The activity starts with the waiting period, where now you send out your invites and ask your guests try to travel to your location. The event itself plays in 5 stages. First is planning, which was what we handled earlier, and now we're in the waiting stage. This usually lasts around 5 months, but it really depends on how quickly your invitees arrive. If everyone shows up early, the coronation moves straight into the next stage, the prelude. Now we get to the event proper, where we are given various decisions to make our coronation grander or get bonuses to the detriment of our detractors. Here we see a new table at the side, the supporters and detractors. Basically, supporters make your coronation better with boosts to prestige and piety, and make the event much more magnificent, whereas the detractors make your coronation a heck, giving maluses like stress and reducing the magnificence of the event. Their intents can be seen below their names. Basically, the event rewards and benefits depend on the magnificence of the coronation, multiplying your legacy, prestige, and rewards depending on the level of magnificence. Next, we'll encounter a variety of personal events during the coronation, involving supporters, detractors, and even neutral parties. One guaranteed event is deciding who will officiate the ceremony. If we are an emperor, only the Pope can reside. But as a king, we have 2 choices: following traditions and have our court bishop crown us, gaining steady bonuses to prestige, piety, and the bishop's approval, or crowning ourselves. Self-coronation boosts prestige, but it comes at the cost of losing favor with the clergy and devout nobles. Another common event comes from one of your supporters. In this case, my wife, CK3, who presents me with a gift. Sometimes it may be an armor, accessories, or weapons. In this case, it's a dagger. We have a few ways to respond: accept the gift and keep it, or refuse it, but instead, use this opportunity to strengthen our bond with her, or take a third option: show appreciation and confide with her the stresses of this event, which boosts magnificence and reduces stress. If your wife isn't present, then another key supporter will step in with a similar event, offering similar options, but this time offering a deep friendship. Here is one common event where our detractors try to embarrass us and ruin the coronation by making us look weak in front of our vassals and other opponents. As for now, there are 2 main options: either to stay silent, which makes you appear weak and reduces your magnificence, or shut them down by threatening them or punishing them, which intimidates rivals but costs you a lot of opinion and paints you as tyrannical, creating more enemies. Here's another event where a war-hungry vassal tries to convince us to let him attack one of our neighboring detractors, even offering to leave the coronation and march to war. We can either give him the green light or calm things down by redirecting his temper towards the feast that will follow, where instead of weapons, it's words that get thrown around, where we can boost our magnificence by showing temperance. An event that didn't pop up in this run, but still is very common, is when your character visits a church and reflects on the icons and murals before praying for God's blessing. This can lead to a variety of benefits. You might want to thank God for blessing the realm, making your coronation even more magnificent, or you could pray to God for guidance, displaying humility, gaining extra piety, or you might want to seek the intercession of Saint Mark, the patron saint of finance, to help make your realm wealthier, which provides a nice boost to stewardship. Here's another event tied to weaken detractors' intent, involving vassals who are culturally different from us, and because of that, they can become targets due to differences. We have two main choices: either to assert dominance, which lowers their opinion but gives us a hook, or ignore them, which hurts our acceptance of their culture. This one is a guaranteed event where either a heretic or an infidel shows up and offers you a blessing from their God. You can either accept it for short-term gain, refuse it to stand firm with your own faith, or try to spin it politically to your advantage. There are a bunch of other events I didn't showcase here. To keep this short, they are similar to the previous events, just bouncing between your supporters and detractors. A lot of time, you'll get the choice to either take a jab at your rivals or just let it slide. What I like about these kinds of events is that there's always this tug of war going on. Your supporters trying to prop you up, and your detractors looking for any excuse to put you down. And the neutrals sometimes come in to break in the tension. With all preparations complete, the coronation ceremony itself begins with a grand procession into the domain where it's held. The priests, nobles, and the king-to-be enter the city in solemn order. From this event, we can gain the first rewards of the majesty level of our coronation. Here, we get a strong boost to magnificence. Conversely, if your majesty level is low, you'll get a chance to improve your majesty level, but at further costs. This part of the coronation is straightforward. The ritual unfolds in stages. First, I pledge loyalty to the church through the presiding bishop, followed by my nobles offering their oath of fealty. Then comes the turn of the common people, with peasants showing reverence and recognition to their new king, highly dependent on the popular opinion of where the coronation takes place. One of the most significant moments is the blessing of the crown itself. Here, I have a choice to bind the crown permanently to the kingdom of Epirus, boosting magnificence, or bind it to my heir, ensuring the artifact stays in the dynasty. Even if the kingdom title is lost, the crown will still remain in the dynasty. Finally, the anointment takes place, echoing the Old Testament tradition of kings being consecrated with holy oil. This moment offers a powerful option. I could use it as a mandate for a crusade, or leverage it to convert heathen vassals, or frame it as a sign demanding obedience from my zealous and like-minded lords. However the choice, it represents the divine seal on my reign. With that, King Roger here is officially crowned King of Epirus, and the Queen Sigelgaita, she too is crowned alongside with him. And with the crowning complete, the final stage is the oath-taking that closes the whole event, where we can promise something to the realm. There are 8 choices here. Let's go to each of them. First is to secure alliances, to safeguard the realm from invasions. Second is where you promise to improve the realm by expansion, conquering neighboring counties. Third is to stop the warring and maintain peace, or to build up counties by constructing buildings. Fifth is to host the greatest of hunts. Sixth is to build influence on neighboring kingdoms by installing leaders in debt to you. Seventh is to provide homes and villages for your veterans and knights. 8th is to help fellow Christians by improving pilgrimage sites and shrines. 9th is to improve the well-being of your realm's poor by providing charity and alms. Though take note that the oaths depend on your title and certain parameters. All of these oaths have a time limit. Each of these need to be accomplished within a limited time frame. And if you succeed, you get some rewards in legitimacy, prestige, and much more. And with that, our coronation is complete. Now comes the feast section. Even though officially the coronation is done, but there are still some opportunity for us to impact how this ends. But most of the events that occur in this section are similar to feasts, where we get to have a chance to improve relationships with the attendees, especially our vassals, but in some cases, we can now have a chance to reconcile with our detractors or even further antagonize them. But the most important event here is the final event, which is the King's Intent, where we can get to choose what type of reward or modifiers that we can acquire for the whole event. This one really depends on the type of intent that you choose, as the one for the impressed attendees is mostly having to do with vassals and minority cultures, whereas the weekend detractors are mainly giving stress to your detractors, possibly killing them, whereas the embraced supporters will provide benefits to your supporters. And lastly, the Exalt the Crown will provide boosts to your artifacts or your counties. As for now that I'm aware of, there are 3 decisions for each of these, and depending on your skill, whether martial, stewardship, or the rest, determines how many of the recipients get benefits. And with that ends the content of the Coronation DLC. All that's left is doing what's required for the oath that we've made. First off, I want to say that I like this DLC. It fleshes out the early stages of a king truly becoming a ruler, as in the base game, all it takes to be a king is to inherit a crown or create a title, and that's it. Usually, the only way to increase legitimacy is through feasts, hunts, or other activities, but these are not designed with legitimacy in mind. They only raise it as a side effect, and that's why this DLC feels refreshing. As I've hinted in the showcase section of this video, I really enjoy the sense of agency you get during the different phases of the coronation. There's a constant tug of war between supporters and detractors, and sometimes the only choice is to accept a hit to either stress, opinion, or tyranny. I also appreciate that the events and rewards feel balanced. They're not overpowered to the point of creating one obvious meta, at least from what I've seen. And another point is that the variety of oaths and intents also adds a lot of variations, making coronations feel a bit different between each playthrough, depending on what you want to prioritize. But with that said, I do have some issues. On the technical level, I think that the background art is another weak spot. It's bland and clearly reused from other event packs, which really takes away the grandeur of a coronation, and it feels like it's just a little bit lazy. And another point is that the difference between becoming a king and having an imperial coronation, their difference are very minute, or there isn't much distinction between the two. Sure, there may be some textual variation between each other, but aside from that, most of the events in the regular coronation and in the anointed coronation are similar, and they didn't really somewhat flesh out the coronations in different cultures, as like from what I could see is that most of the coronation happen the same way, but they just have different texts to describe the coronation, and that's just about it, which I find to be disappointing. For a mechanic with so much depth, there should be more variation in how this experience play out. My biggest gripe about this DLC is that though it has some depth, that I feel like this DLC should have been part of the base game or part of the Royal Court DLC when it was released. It seems like they deliberately held or withheld the development of this content just to sell it as a separate event pack, and that's really disappointing, and it's not really out of line to how Paradox operates currently. But still, I expect Paradox to improve on this DLC over time and make it more developed or intertwined with the base game or other DLCs, and add some variations, as they have this type of reputation for reworking some features that they find to be lacking, or the reception is not so good. And since it's only an event pack and not a major expansion like the upcoming Under Heaven, I'm not too upset with its shortcomings. Overall, I think it blends gameplay and realism fairly well and improves the base mechanics in a meaningful way. But for now, I'd rate the DLC as a 6 out of 10. It has some potential, especially if Paradox decided to flesh it out further.